You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the independent columnist James Rampton and the Spectator's economics editor Kate Andrews. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Prime Minister's internal party ructions over the effectiveness of his new Rwanda migration plan lead the Metro. The headline there, Rishi on the rack. The Eye says that Mr Sunak is fighting for his future as pressure from the right of the party intensifies. This is the front of the Telegraph, PM under pressure to amend Rwanda plans. The Guardian also focuses on his plight as he faces one of the most important weeks of his premiership. The Express, meanwhile, quotes the Tory party chairman saying that the bill stands on the side of the British people and should be supported. The Mail reports that football pundit Gary Lineker has ignited another row over BBC impartiality by signing a letter along with other celebrities criticising the Rwanda policy. The Financial Times has a poll which finds that more than half of America's voters think President Biden is spending too much on war aid to Ukraine, just as he's asking Congress for billions of dollars more. And finally, The Star leads with a warning that Britain's rail network could be crippled by solar storms that might damage signals and cause train crashes. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by the independent columnist James Rampton and the Spectator's economics editor Kate Andrews. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Eye front page, shall we? And looking to Rishi Sunak's the week ahead, which is going to be a crucial week for him, facing, well, challenges from the right, challenges from the left, from all around.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was quite funny that in the headlines you showed a picture of him wobbling on a boat, in fact, right by the White Cliffs of Dover. I've never seen someone more wobbly and insecure. I mean, it's a very good emblem for where he is at the moment. The Evening Standard in London had a cartoon of him on Friday saying his new airplanes policy, and he was strapped to the back of a kamikaze plane. I just think this is absolutely disastrous, this policy, because what he's managed to do, people said he was a safe pair of hands, but what he's managed to do is alienate both the right and the left of his party. Both of them are saying, well, we can't support it, but for completely opposite reasons. So it's quite a skillful political act, in a way, to completely divide your party so that at this stage it appears that he can't get the support from anyone. And they're also calling him now Rishi Gervais, after David Brent, the man who promises loads but gets nothing done. So he seems to be losing confidence. Support is draining away from him. There was a pasta plot the other night. Right-wing Tories met in an Italian restaurant in Covent Garden. The funny thing is, they said, we've got to get rid of him, but they didn't suggest who might replace him. We might come on to that later. So, to me, it is the biggest crisis of his premiership, and one MP is even suggesting he should call an election if he loses on Tuesday. But it's self-inflicted. He could have steered a path that was more skillful, that was more subtle, that would have brought together at least one side of the party, but now he's just alienated everyone.
Kate, do you agree this is a pivotal moment for his premiership?
It was certainly a pivotal moment. Rishi Sunak has not had the easiest first year in government, but the next 48 hours are potentially his biggest. We have the second reading of the revised Rwanda bill on Tuesday. MPs are set to vote Tuesday night. Going into Monday, Monday is all about the meetings. You know, I think a lot of minds are not made up yet, especially towards the centre and the soft left of the Tory party. You're going to have the One Nation group, which will have up to 100 MPs meeting to talk about this, to see whether or not they can get on board with the bill. But we just have to remember how many factions there are. And in so many ways, what a fragile party this is. You've got the European Research Group meeting, you've got the Common Sense Group meeting, you've got the New Conservatives, which are a pretty new group, but becoming quite important vocally. They're meeting. The Northern Research Group is meeting. The trust sites are meeting. And everybody is thinking about what this bill means politically and also in terms of public policy. Part of the difficulty here is that nobody is sure that this new bill will get past the Supreme Court. And I think the politics plays a lot into that, because you have some of the more supportive MPs saying, look, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't make perfect the enemy of the good. Take a bill if you can get it. But I think a lot of MPs are worried about voting in favour of a bill that they think could be struck down again. And there is a very real chance that that could happen, because it is not obvious that the Supreme Court's worries about the original bill have been addressed in this new one.
David Davis was telling us today that he thought the rebellion would be quite small. I mean, the figures that have been quoted in some of the papers is that he needs to keep the rebellion below 56 abstentions or 28 votes against to avoid
I think
defeat.
29 is an important number. If 29 MPs vote against this, then it could be shot down.
It would be
His
the
MPs.
it would be the first time the government has lost the first reading of a bill since 1986, the height of Thatcherism. So that shows how crucial it is for him. I mean, it's astonishing that he's got to this position. You talk about the different factions. In a typically self-aggrandising way, the right-wing groups are calling themselves the Five Families. They obviously think they're some sort of godfathers from a mafia movie. They love that self-aggrandisement. They're also talking about the Star Chamber. I mean, it's very self-dramatising. But for me, as not a Tory voter, I just get annoyed with the continual psychodrama to which the rest of us are subjected. This constant sense that we are dragged into their Five Families crisis when we're thinking, well, there are actually more important things in the world. Yes, immigration is very important, but we were talking before, is it in the top 5 of voters concerned? Aren't people more worried about the cost of living crisis? The recent report by the Poverty Action Group suggested that 30% of children in this country are born into poverty. Now, to me, as a sentient human being in the 6th biggest economy in the world, that is an outrage. How is that happening in the UK?
But that didn't really make the front pages,
no,
though, did
but
it?
that is the most important issue to me. And yes, immigration is important. Having said that, the Rwanda issue would only affect 5% of immigration cases. They've already spent £290 million on it. They've managed to send 3 Home Secretaries there, but no asylum seekers. To me, it's an absolute disgrace that they're not focusing on the cost of living crisis.
Kate, but we read in the Express that the party chairman, Richard Holden, he's saying that he's praising the bill, describing it as decisive by the Prime Minister, and saying that Rishi Sunak and this Conservative government pledged that we would stop the boats.
And he's saying that the bill stands on the side of British people. That's a quote from him. Look, the difficulty is that in those 5 pledges that Rishi Sunak set out at the start of the year, one of them was to stop the boats. It is very clear that by the end of the year, the boats are not going to be stopped. Frankly, I think one could ask if they're ever completely going to be stopped, but that has come to be defined as at least one flight taking off to Rwanda before the next election. And it's interesting because Rishi Sunak inherited this policy, and he couldn't necessarily make it go away even if he had wanted to. And I mean, he's really embraced it publicly. It doesn't seem like he ever wanted to make it go away. But even if he had, I think he knew in order to get the support to become Prime Minister, this was going to be something he had to focus on. But it has become very clear that it's not just technically tricky, it is an incredibly divisive issue, one in which the Labour Party struggles to answer questions on, but of course they're not in power right now, so there's less pressure for them to do so. Nobody has a convenient, ready off-the-shelf answer to how you stop the boats from coming. And nobody has a convenient answer to the Supreme Court saying, we simply don't trust that Rwanda might not end up deporting some of these migrants. And as I said, it's not obvious whatsoever right now that when the bill inevitably ends up under scrutiny again, that it would pass that test. So I think one of the reasons that you have all the factions meeting is they are looking at this from a political angle, not just a public policy one. They're thinking about the next steps, how this might pan out, and they're thinking to themselves, we're going to have an answer for why we supported it and why we didn't. Now, Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister, who was very close to Rishi Sunak, a real ally of his,
That's why it was so damaging.
Yeah.
Huge, until a couple of days ago. You know, his language this morning was very interesting because he was saying, I think we can make it work. This is not somebody who obviously wants to take down Rishi Sunak and the Prime Minister in a way that perhaps some other MPs do. This is someone who's saying, I think we can make it work, but he's clearly very nervous about signing up to a bill that could be defeated again.
Yes, I mean, he's saying that he can't support the legislation as it stands. And that is the point, that even if the bill does go through on Tuesday, there could be various amendments further down the line.
Yeah, and to pick up what Kate said, absolutely right about the legal angle. The Supreme Court shot it down a few weeks ago, and Lord Garnier, the former Tory Solicitor General, I saw him on Channel 4 News this week, and he was saying the bill is completely bizarre because it's saying, well, we're saying it's safe to go to Rwanda, even though the Supreme Court has deemed it's not. And he said it's like saying cats are dogs. You know, just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. And so any individual asylum seeker who challenges, in my view, would have a good chance of success because they haven't materially changed, you know, the facts in order to make this work.
I think what the position the government would like to find itself in is obviously that the bill passes and it stands up in the Supreme Court. But if it didn't, they want to be able to say, we are not in a position where we can change our laws and get a different public policy outcome with our current system. They'd like to be able to use that as an election tool. I'm not necessarily saying that will work, but I think that that's the position that they would like to find themselves in. And the difficulty, again, for Rishi Sunak is that he has definitely moved to the right of the party on immigration. I mean, substantially so. We saw that huge crackdown on legal migration next week, and going after family visas and marriages, something that I think is in many ways not very conservative because they want to get that net migration figure down. But if he goes any further to the right, he worries that his bill doesn't stand a chance. And that is why he can't move much further. And that's why you're seeing, again, the factions really coming out here.
But also Rwanda might reject it. That's the other thing. If we disapply the ECHR, Rwanda has said, well, no, we're not playing ball with that. That's absolutely fundamental to the treaty. So he can't go any further to the right. And in order to appease what I would see as foaming at the mouth right-wingers in his party, he can't go any further to the left either. So he is trapped with that. But you mentioned net migration. It's at a record high. 745,000. And that is something almost, this is a dead cat. It's trying to distract the voters, and quite rightly, who care about immigration, from those massive figures, which, you know, are being sort of buried.
The Prime Minister. We've got to leave it there for the moment. Lots more we could talk about. Coming up, though, we'll discuss the front page of The Independent. UK's top emergency doctor says A&E is making patients even sicker. Stay with us. Welcome back. You are still watching the press preview. With me, the independent columnist James Rampton and the Spectator's economics editor Kate Andrews. Let's have a quick look at the front page of the Metro. Can it be true, James? A plot to bring back Boris Johnson teamed up with Nigel Farage.
Well, I can't imagine anything better. As a Liberal, I think that would be fantastic because that would be complete suicide for the Tory party, I think. Isabel Harden on the front page of I talked about the Tories being in a death spiral. That would complete their death because they may have a hardcore of perhaps 30% of voters who support them. For a start, neither of them are MPs at the moment. Farage has tried 7 times to be a Tory MP and failed. Boris Johnson is the only sitting Prime Minister to be found guilty of a criminal offence. He's the only Prime Minister to be found guilty of misleading Parliament. So not exactly undamaged goods. And the thought that they could be the answer, you just think, oh, my goodness, what sort of desperate state are the Tories in? And I suppose the answer is an extremely desperate state, that this is even being floated as an idea that the world king, the man who seemed much more interested in his own fortune than the country's, should be the answer to all their problems. Well, as a non-Tory voter, I would be delighted, because I think they would completely crash and burn.
Kate, very quickly, do you think this could ever be a reality?
Look, it's funny to see those two names next to each other because we have very different contexts here. If you speak to some Tory MPs, especially those who would have had what we consider to be pretty healthy majorities until we look at these public pollings, and you know, who maybe have 10, 13,000 seat majorities, they miss Boris. They think that he could do some real help on the campaign trail in particular. Nigel Farage, very different question. Whilst you might meet some Tory MPs who are sympathetic to him entering the party, I think you're going to struggle to meet many who want him anywhere near the real reins of power.
Well, let's see if he wins I'm a Celebrity. Maybe that will change. Let's move on to the Independent.
Yes.
And this story about the UK's top emergency doctor saying that A&E is making patients even sicker. Explain, James.
Well, by the way, Farage hasn't won. He's come third in I'm a Celeb, so that is now a moot point. But I'm delighted, because he would have caused a breaking point within the Tory party, to quote himself. But the A&E story is very interesting, because all of us, I think, certainly everybody I know, treasures the NHS as possibly the greatest thing this country has ever achieved. You know, it's
I don't. But
no, you don't.
Now you know. Now you know one.
I do believe that very passionately, and I do think that it's in crisis. And I think that this report from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine underscores that. Their head, Dr. Adrian Boyle, says that elderly patients are now waiting so long for treatment in A&E that they're developing both bed sores and delirium. And another NHS consultant is saying that corridor care, as it's called, is now routine practice, so that the crisis that the NHS is facing as it goes into its most difficult month is real and
Kate, let's just bring Kate in. She's going to about 10 seconds.
Well, look, I think with stories like this, we can all recognise that universal access to healthcare is a very important principle, but the NHS is no treasure, not when patient outcomes are as bad as they are compared to neighbours.
OK, Kate and James, thank you both, and for sticking to time. Let's have a look at the weather for you now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
After the weekend storms, the unsettled theme will continue, but the weather looks dry and calmer later next week. Monday will start mainly fine, but it'll be chilly in the north with the risk of icy stretches. Early strong winds across southern and eastern Britain will soon ease. There'll be a few showers through the morning, mainly across Northern Ireland, northwest England and parts of Scotland. Most other places will stay dry with good sunny spells, but southwest Ireland will turn wet and windy by lunchtime. Rain will spread across Ireland on strengthening winds during the afternoon, reaching Northern Ireland later on. Much of Britain will stay fine, dry and relatively calm, but showers will affect more of the northeast.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Coming up next on Sky News at 11, Rishi Sunak under pressure from both sides of his party over his Rwanda asylum plan ahead of a crucial Commons vote next week.